Welcome. This is a video for you in which I'm talking about all the key concepts of basic concept of public management. So basically, I'm going to begin with the chapter 1 of our primary textbook for this course. So I'm sure you have the book by your own hand right now, right? And so today's objectives, I'm going to briefly review chapter 1 and Moore's chapter 2, defining public value, as well as Moore's article written in 2000 is about managing for value organizational strategy in for-profit, non-profit, and governmental organizations. So first, I'm going to review chapter 1, what is public management? So basically, if you think about the contents of the first chapter, really getting an introduction to public management, what it is, how it evolved over time for the complexity and uncertainty, for the constraint, for the challenges. What does public managers look like these days? So we think about what are in the key dimensions of public management. So we see you here, and I'm talking about three different dimensions of public management: structure, culture, and craft. The first one, structure, really is an issue that pertains to the constraints that are imposed by our formal and legal systems. The Constitution in the United States Code, state constitutions, local government charters, that could be documents prescribe the formal structure program and its agencies, and those provide constraints within which public managers have to work. So which means it is very tangible. So the dimensions public management we consider as we move away toward more intangible aspect, those more so concept really that hard personal concepts rather than in-person concepts. So we talk about organizational culture. So next, culture obviously affects public managers in important ways because it influences the norms, values, and standards that dictate how agency operates, how it functions, what motivates, what gives it meaning, and what gives creative purpose, something like that. So as well as subcultures is kind of very important for managers. And oftentimes, culture can overcome the structural constraints that are posed by those formal rules and guidelines that agency structure sell, the leadership structure and the budgetary structure kind of things. And also culture allows us to work around the edges in craft. As third dimensions here, it talks really about individual characteristic leadership, goal setting, determine what performance goals are to be established. So let's talk about decision making. It talks about problem solving in some ways, right? Through people and their skills and organizational skills. This is kind of choosing management come down to the individual person art. So think about structure. What are the features in the United States and US system that make it unique and that make it interesting, that characterize public management? So to understand our public management, what it is, we need to think about the American system, political senses. So we have the separation of powers and three branches of government, which are legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and also we know the federal papers well. In the paper, we see the founders have very strong interest, dividing power in seeing to it, our shared and our separated. So we see the executive, right? And also our society have checks and balances in democratic society and also institutional competition regardless of the level of government in the public sector. And also the early study of public administration during the time, progressive eras, and after World War I, the people and public managers at that time focused on the organizational structure and principles to ensure efficient delivery of public goods and services to their people in response to growing number of people and business sectors. But after that, the attention just move toward more management side. So in other words, the government is changing and evolving all the time, so we need to think about this system may create the constraint as well as the balance, but also the imbalance in some ways. So they can limit the ability of anyone in agency or any person and any branches to achieve a particular goals or missions. So also we need to think about that. So in this changing environment, what is public managers' work and how they do it, how they handle it, and what's the best practices and management technique and strategy in response to complex, uncertain environment. So based on our, complex history, how can we characterize public management? There are three different citations as in the textbook, so I want to share with you some of them. And Frederickson and Smith said the public management can be defined as the formal and informal process of guiding human interaction toward public organizational objectives. And next, James Q. Wilson, he's a great scholar in public administration and policy field. He said the public management can be defined as a world of settled institution designed to allow imperfect people to use flawed procedure to cope with insolvable problems. And next, Barry Boltzmann is also a famous scholar in PA field. He said public management research entails a focus on strategy, on inter-organizational relations, and on the interaction of public policy and management. And we need to think about public managers' roles in this era. Basically, public managers may be characterized either a creature of their environment or creators of roles for themselves and of organizational priorities and capacity. The first definition of as a creature of their environments, the public manager should be subservient to political, legal, and organizational influences, so manager to create strategy and choose techniques to accomplish the purposes of public policy. So if you view public managers as creature, you need to think about the Lussach-Glick's post curve. So in this definition, public managers may plan, organize, staff, direct, coordinate, report, and budget. So public managers should obediently carry out specific functions necessary to the operation of public department and bureaus. So they are influenced and primarily constrained by laws and rules, and they need to follow chain of commands in their hierarchical organization. But on the other hand, if you view public managers as creators of their roles, they may have managerial judgment, their own discretion to create formal or informal patterns of coordination among and within their organization, which means they can do micro networking with individuals and other stakeholders working with and across their organizational boundaries. So they also can create opportunity and policy direction and administrative structure and organizational relationship for those whom they manage and with whom they interest. So here the creator, the first formal definition, maybe the author focused on the structure and hierarchical dimensions. On the other hand, for the second definition about the creator, in this definition, the author, I think, emphasized the culture and craft dimensions of public managers. And I'm sure if you took Intro PA before, I'm sure you may recall Woodrow Wilson's politics and administration dichotomy. In that concept, Wilson suggests that there are distinctions between politics and administration, right? But in practice, in reality, in the real setting, these two are intertwined. So in that meaning, the managers always have discretion, and the use of that discretion determines their success, right? So in this textbook, the author's definition of public management is about the process of ensuring that the allocation and the use of resources available to the government are directly lead toward the achievement of lawful public policy goals. So which means public managers should be viewed as neither solely creature, which is primarily influenced and constrained by structural arrangement and laws, nor solely creators of opportunities and contexts. So which means they should be defined and described as both concepts. So in today's environment, public managers can be creature and creator. So I'm sure you have a different opinion about this definition in the textbook. And then we need to think about that what is the current roles of public managers. And next, what do public managers work? I think this slide is too easy to understand, so I'm going to just skip these slides because there are many different agencies and bureaus whose unique authority and characteristics these days, so you can just read by yourself. And the author mentioned that what do public managers do in the public sector? So we need to think about the work of public managers. Basically, their work is intertwined by public making, politics, and leadership, right? So public managers are anyone with responsibility for spending public monies, which is tax basically, and directing public employees toward detected goals, their mission in each agency. Managers must conform to mandate laws and guidelines established by political processes that are beyond their control because they are living in the hierarchical environment, right? And are public managers found exclusively in federal agencies? Obviously, no. They are working in local and state government, right? And of course, there are also employees in private for-profit and non-profit firms are also often engaged in the implementation of public programs. So you may think about contracting out maybe some contractors, who's in a relationship with government to contracting, they are also can be public managers in some ways. So next, what are challenges public managers can face? As far as we know, the system of public organization is an open system, right? So the public managers can be influenced by internal and external environment and any certain changes. So according to the author, they said the consequences of managerial actions are compounded when public managers operate in the situations that are extraordinary in scope and complexity and beyond their ability to be served on their own. So there are some distinctive challenges of public management. First one is manager may confront situations whose causes and solutions lie outside the boundaries of their formal authority or influence. Second, manager can face conflicting demands from powerful actors within and beyond their jurisdiction. Third, they may be responsible for the accountability of subordinate agents, right, within and beyond their government, over whom their formal and informal authority may be poorly defined or non-existent. Fourth, manager may be forced to go on the defensive before they even have an opportunity to fully understand the nature of a problem. Fifth, managers often receive the warning about immediate but poorly defined threats, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities or operational problems. Deciding if and when to act can be costly and challenging. You may think about the Hurricane Katrina's case. There are some different weaknesses and miscommunication across the organization, right? So they might be the best example that stands for challenges of public managers can face. And also public managers must contend with the ingredient values and beliefs of their employees even when they are dysfunctional and resistant to change. And also they can face sudden and discontinuous shift in priorities or tasks. So in terms of again, when we think about Hurricane Katrina case, there are many problems in there, right? So there were lack of effective emergency procedure. There were no communication and coordination between departments, such as Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Homeland Security. And also there's no leadership and there was no goal setting and also there's lack of trained personnel skills. So this can be one of the examples of challenges public managers may face. So at that time, public managers as well as the legislature might think about that. How can they change the system of disaster management, I mean emergency management, to secure public assets or public interest, as well as to enhance organizational culture and capacity or process effectively? And next, there are some things to consider cited in the textbook. So why become public managers? Why people want to be a public managers? There are very simple reasons. First one is job security, because the public managers tenuring means job security over their entire life. And also the second reason to be a public manager, PSN, which is public service motivation, which is widely cited in the public administration literature, which means that individual motives, normal-based motives, and effective motives that contribute to the choice to work in the public sector. So this is the basic two reasons. And next, then there are distinction between public and private management. The Allison said they are fundamentally alike in all unimportant respects in the public and private management, which means there are obviously different between these two sectors. So there are just details about what is public sector and what is private sector. It's obviously very easy. So in the public sector, which is government organization, their revenues are based on the taxes. And the bottom line is equity and the provision of public goods and services to the citizens. And then players are lobbyists and legislative branch and executive branch and also citizens, which is also called voters and taxpayers. And also the process is very open and it's controlled by law. On the other hand, in the private sector, which includes for-profit and non-profit sector, the revenues basically through sales of the products and services in the for-profit organization, but in non-profit organization, the revenue is based on the government grant or voluntary just donors' contributions. And bottom line is very different from government. For the for-profit sector, there are profit, but non-profit sector, the bottom line is faith-based missions to help something and to educate children and to take care of homeless, something like that. And their players are owners and stakeholders and sometimes donors in the non-profit sector, and process is very close and relatively flexible. And next, Mark Moore's chapter 2, Defining Public Value. This is a book, it's now several years old, but its theme is enduring. It's because it is very important to what we do in public management class. So we need to understand what is public value. Basically, in this book, there are cited one case named Sanitation Commissioner. Actually, the sanitation commissioner is a manager, public manager at his work, right? So what's the point of his effort in this book? Basically, the aim of managerial work in the public sector is to create public value. And in line of this concept at large, government can be a value-creating sector. So public value can be defined by different values such as accountability and effectiveness and efficiency and fairness kind of things. And also in this textbook, the public value can be defined by politics, professionalism. But the thing is, in the public sector, the overall aim of managerial work seems less clear compared to the private sector. So what manager need to do is to produce value far more ambiguous. So how to measure is the problematic. So because it's very difficult and there are many qualitative values in addition to quantitative value, which is very different from private sector. So with these challenges in mind, the author recommends several analytical techniques, which include program evaluation, cost effectiveness analysis, and benefit cost analysis. But the thing is, among them, benefit cost analysis is usually presented as the superior technique, but the thing is, it is more difficult to complete complete in the public sector, so because this is only based on individual preferences. But the thing is, in the public, values are based on the collectively defined objectives that emerge from a process of collective decision making in our society. So program evaluation and cost effectiveness analysis seem the better techniques precisely because they look away from individual preferences but towards more collectively established purposes. So these two are better than the benefit cost analysis. And also public value can be defined by client and citizen satisfaction and other values. And there are case cited in this chapter, Sanitation Commissioner's case. In this case, public managers should achieve mandated objectives effectively and efficiently, and their managerial purposes are obviously, we can say, sanitation produces clean cities, or sanitation protects our health, the citizens' health, from the viruses and epidemics. But the thing is, you need to think about why these services are valuable. Because it would be satisfactory to the community as a whole, not just to the beneficiary of the service. Because I already mentioned that the public value in the public sector is based on the collectively established purposes, not individual preferences. And also political system authorize the public measures to spend public resources such as money and staff and other relationship with the other organizations. In line with the case, the sanitation commissioner, there we need to think about another case about garbage collection. There are two different frames for viewing garbage collection. First one is producing an asthmatic amenities. The second one is guarding the public's health. So basically, based on this framework, there are two different contradictory public values, which are efficiency and fairness. So someone who support for efficiency, they mentioned that the reason to publicly produce the garbage collection is because of the economies of scale and price. The government price can reduce incentive to produce it privately, and also there are non-exclusive public goods because the public collection is non-exclusive. And the other people support for fairness concept. They said there are common shared social moral aspiration, and also there are need to fairly distribute the benefit and burden through public enterprise. These contradictory concepts may be related to the next slide about justification for public interventions. So again, why must it be publicly provided rather than private? Because the market failure, which means the government must intervene to correct the defect in the market. Because there are technical problems embedded in the private sector, such as there are free rider, and also we need to seek for fairness and justice in our society. These are very fundamental values, public values. So we need to protect our public health, our citizens' health. That should be guaranteed by social valuable condition as well as by governments. And also health is normally and commonly considered a primary good, but that should be connected by common aspiration, and also they should be guaranteed to produce social justice. So, but the thing is, remember that the author mentioned that ultimately fairness may influence the economic efficiency of organization. So overall, public sector garbage collection is justified by a shared social aspiration for a healthy and clean environment, as well as by the necessity of fairly distribution of the benefits and burdens in terms of producing that result through our government enterprises. So we need to know the satisfaction of citizens who have seen a collective need and question the public response to that need. Public manager must always see public sector enterprise from both perspectives based on efficiency and fairness. So overall public cleanness can be a technical problem or market failure in some ways, and also that can be guaranteed to produce social justice in other ways. So again, fairness and efficiency can be distinct, but both perspectives must always be considered. I'm sure this is ongoing topic because usually there are many different principles that might be used to determine the distribution of resources. So I think debates about fairness and efficiency are good because they renew the authorization of the enterprise. And next, I'm going to explain the public manager's role according to Moore. I think this is very similar slide, what I've already mentioned that in chapter 1 in the textbook. So I'm going to briefly explain what it stands for public manager's role. Basically, Moore said public manager role is getting broad and getting long-term perspective over time. Of course, there are institutional continuity when public managers plan something, but too much respect for continuity of institution can be an excuse for resisting change because there are always new problem and new technology and new economic social changes what we face. And also there are political demands over time and also scandal also affect the public manager's role. So we need to think about new public values, which is adaptability. So organizations and public managers should use this opportunity to perform its traditional mission more efficiently and more fairly over time in response to changing environment. So toward the managerial view, which is new view of public value. There are several arguments. The Moore mentioned that he said the value is rooted in the desire and perceptions of individuals. There are different kind of desires to be satisfied in our society. So public manager can create value in the sense of satisfying the desires of our citizens through public sector production with money and their authority. And also public managers should define public value by establishing and operating an institution that meets citizens as well as their representatives' desires for properly ordered and productive public institutions. So the world in which the public manager operates will change over time. It is not enough that managers simply maintain the continuity, what I already mentioned that before. So the enterprise of public sector should be adaptable to new environment. So here we need to new public values, which are continuity, as well as efficiency and adaptability. So again, I would say the public value, these are very core fundamental idea in public management and public sector. So overcome the uncertain and complex environment and or create new public value, we need to study what is stand for strategic planning and strategic management. And next, I'm going to briefly review more the article about managing for values. Here in this article, Mark Moore looks at the ideal strategy as organizational strategy. So he asks some questions about that, how the organization will operate, create value, and sustain itself in the immediate future. He looks at core differences among the three different sectors, particularly with respect to strategic planning. So first one, in for-profit organization, he mentioned that the form of the financial target is very important. So how a company plans to compete in various product and service market is the core strategy in the for-profit organization. But the thing is, in non-profit and governmental public organization, they might be different because the bottom line is mission rather than financial values. Because the mission is basically, for example, to help the poor or to help homeless or to help unemployed, which is related to the public interest and the public services. And also, there are different bottom line across the sectors. Ultimately, the strategy should be self-feasible, value-creating, and sustainable. And Moore said also, to ensure this result, the organization's existing capabilities have to fit it to the challenges and the opportunities of the environment in which it's operating. And next, there are differences across the sector in terms of defining sources of revenues. This is very obvious distinction. That first, in terms of for-profit sector, the revenue is based on the earned by the sales of products and services to willing customers. But in non-profit sector, based on the charities, which means charitable contribution from donors, of course, as well as government grants. And then the public sector is obviously based on the tax dollars because we pay taxes to government, right? And government sources are always important strategically to every organization, because without this, the organizations cannot survive in these days. Also responsive to the expectation and demands of different groups. I already mentioned this. I'm going to skip this. And next one, how to measure the value produced. Basically, compared to for-profit sector, the value of neither non-profit enterprises nor government bureaucracies is particularly well measured by their financial performance. Specifically speaking, in for-profit sector, their performance is based on the financial returns delivered to shareholders and the use value delivered to customers, because which is well measured by financial performance easily. But the thing is, in non-profit sector, the value is based on the achievement of social purposes and satisfaction of donors, something like that. In the public sector, the value is based on the fulfillment of the citizen aspiration. So in this article, the number one consideration is that we have to take into account is that non-profit organizations, as their name implies, are not financially motivated, the bottom line, which is resources generated, not the core metrics on which their performance is assessed. And if that's the case, the typical private sector strategic management model maybe is not applicable to nonprofit and public sector. So we need to think about the complete, distinct strategic planning and management model for nonprofit and public sector. But before think about it, we need to think about first what is the mission stand for. According to Moore, for nonprofit and government organizations, mission can be defined as the value of the organization used in judging past performance and assessing future performance as well. So this is very more invisible rather than financial ones. I mean the mission of the nonprofit and public sector. Because there are, for example, we can think about their missions. One of their missions can be to encourage a love or art and music, to educate the young, or to comfort the disabled, or to feed the hungry. This is very invisible and qualitative value. So overall, the goal of public managers in nonprofit and public sector is to create public values. Again, it can be more concrete term, but less flexible in changing and adapting their mission in response to the changing circumstances compared to for-profit firms. So again, as Moore argued, there are different relationships between social value, financial performance, and organizational survival across the sector. The first figure is about the for-profit sector's, framework. So in the for-profit sector, the three concepts of value maximization, financial performance, and organizational survival are all closely aligned. The way that for-profit firms produce social value is by producing products and services that are bought by customers and earn a return for shareholders. So the performance of this firm in producing value is well summarized in its financial statements based on representing their past and future performances. But in contrast, the second framework is about nonprofit and public sectors. So in these sectors, these concepts are not so neatly aligned. So in other words, the achievement of social objectives is more important than financial performance. So there may be no necessary connection between the survival of the organization and the value it's producing. So there may be many valuable contributions made by an organization that will turn out to be financially unsustainable. There may be many financially sustainable efforts that are not particularly valuable. So again, in the public and non-profit sectors, The organizations do not necessarily expect to earn revenue simply by achieving their mission or even by making progress toward it. There is no automatic relationship between incrementals of achievements in the organization's mission and increments of revenues earned. Because in the public sector, usually money is the means to a desired social end, objective. On the other hand, in the private sector, the projects and services delivered are the means to the end of making money. And next, Noor mentioned the strategic triangle made by Kennedy schools. This is about the strategy in the public sector. First, there are three different key factors which include values, legitimacy and support, and the latter one, the operational capacity. So when you think about the contracting out in local and state governments, there are values which include cost effectiveness, which means cost saving, and financial accountability, which means in the use of public funds against corruptions. And also we need to think about the good quality services and products delivered to citizens and communities. This is the basic value of contracting out. And there should be legitimacy and support, which is political support, especially in the process of contracting out. And also there should be state law, contract law, and qualified purchasing agents, which means contract managers. And also there are competitive bidding process and monitoring and sanction and rewards, and there should be financial resources and personnel and training staff, including lawyer, accountants, and project managers and monitoring offices, which can be related to operational capacity. And also there should be experience, the good past experience and subcontractors' experience and their reputation and responsibility for quality and cost according to the contract. So when the public major face challenges and barriers, strategic plan should be needed. And based on these three factors, the strategy should be implemented. So far, I've covered the week 2. This is basic concept of public management. I know this is very long, and I'm sure for the next time, I will try to shorten no more than 30 minutes for the videos. So this is the discussion question for this week. In today's complex environment, public managers is viewed as a creature or creator. Explain it briefly with an example or case. This is basically question drawn from, I think, the Kill and Lynch chapter 1. So please read the textbook and articles what I've covered in this video, and you can answer this question on Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. on February 5th, next Thursday. Thank you.